Hello everyone and welcome back to our virtual Mishnah Berurah here. We're holding a Mishnah Berurah Chelik Gimel and we will be learning today Miras Hashem Daf Chav Daled Amid Aleph. Our learning should be a schus for Achenu Kol Beis Yisrael Hanusunu Batzara Ba'Shivya Ha'imdim Bein Bayam Bein Bayabasha Hamakim Yerachem Aleim Veitziim Yitzar L'Rvacha Me'afelu La'ira U'Mishibud L'Geula Hashta Ba'Gola U'Vizman Kariv V'Naimar Amen. So we're continuing to learn Hilchas Shabbos. We're here in Siman Reish Nun Gimel, working our way through the halachas of Shehiyah, Chazara, and we pick up today on Chav Gimel Amid Beis, 2 lines off the bottom in the words of the Ramah, right by the Tzadik Dalid, the ice cut in Tzadik Dalid for the Mishnah Berurah, V'chal HaDvarim. So, says the Ramah, V'chal HaDvarim she'asa l'asais midvarim elu. We've been speaking here about Chazara, when you're allowed to put something back on the fire after it was removed from the fire. So we learned that there are basically 5 conditions that you have to have in order for Chazara to be mutter. First of all, and most obvious, the food has to be mavushal kol tzarchai. We have to have a fully cooked food so that there's no possibility of actual bishul when you take the food and you put it on the fire. So it has to be mavushal kol tzarchai. The fire has to be grufa ketuma. In our vernacular, you need a blech. Either it has to be grufa, that the coals were swept out, or ketuma, that you banked them. We use a blech. Our blech, l'chayra, it accomplishes ketuma for sure. We put on a blech that diffuses the heat. It lessens the chayim of the heat. It also covers over the fire. So our blech is ketuma. So you need mavushal kol tzarchai. You need grufa uketuma. You need that when you took the pot off the fire, it was daitay lachzira. You had in mind to put it back. We need that it's oida biyadai. You never put it down. And we also need oida raisachas. We need that the food still has to be hot. If we're missing those, we have a problem. Chazara could become aser. Now, on that, says the Ramah, v'chol advarim she'asa l'asais b'dvarim elu. Anytime, let's say, that Chazara would be aser. So let's say you took your cholent off. When you took it off, you didn't have in mind to put it back. And then you put it down on a trivet on the countertop. So it's not oida b'yadai. So you have a blech, it's grufa ketuma. The cholent is definitely mavushal called tzarchai. Maybe it's even oida reisachas. Maybe you changed your mind and you decided that you wanted to put it back very soon after you took it off. So maybe it's still hot. But you lost out on daitay lachzira. You didn't have in mind to put it back. And you also lost out on oida biyada. You put it down and you let go of it. So now Chazara is aser. So says the Ramah, v'chol advarim she'asa l'asais b'dvarim elu. Anytime we come upon one of these cases where it's aser to put that pot back on the fire, aser lo yamar le'ena Yehudi l'asais. You also cannot ask an Eina Yehudi to do it for you. Lachein, therefore, says the Ramah, aser loymar le'eni Yehudi lahachem hakdera im nitztane. If you took a pot off the fire and the food got cold, and now you want to ask an Eina Yehudi to put it back on, you're not allowed to. It's nitztane. It's not oida resachas. The food is already cold. You're not allowed to ask an Eina Yehudi to put it back. Not only that, but says the Ramah, v'im asakain, if you ask an Eina Yehudi to put it back, and he does put it back, aser la'achlai, you're not allowed to eat it. Once he puts it back, you're not allowed to eat it. Not only are you not allowed to eat it, afilu tzainen, you're not even allowed to eat it on Shabbos after it gets cold again. So you're not even going to be neneh from what the Eina Yehudi did. It's not hot, it's cold. You're still not allowed to eat it. Let's jump into the Mishnah Berurah over here, back in Chav Gimel Amid Beis. Mishnah Berurah is cut in Tzadik Daled. So the Ramah said, v'chol hadvarim. All of these things that we have been learning that are aser to do, you're not allowed to ask an Eina Yehudi to do them. Points out the Mishnah Berurah, Hainu afilu dvarim she'ein behem rak yisad d'Rabbanan. Even Chazara, which is only in yisad d'Rabbanan, remember, we're talking about food that's mavushal called tzarchai. Maybe it's a davar yavesh, so it doesn't even matter if it got cold, right? So you don't have a problem of bishul here. You're not dealing with bishul, daraisa. What are you dealing with? You're dealing with an Issa D'Rabbanan of Chazara. Still, you're not allowed to ask an Eina Yehudi to do it. And the reason is something that we learned earlier, which is that Amir La'akum is also even on a Darabanan. Amir La'akum is not only also on Daraisis, Amir La'akum is also on Darabanans. Therefore, the Ramah said, you're not allowed to ask an Eina Yehudi lahachem hakdera. You're not allowed to ask him to rewarm a pot of food. Now, I just want to point out to you that it says here kedera, a pot. Normally, when we're talking about a kedera, a pot of food, that automatically insinuates we're dealing with a davar lach. Now, let's remember again the critical difference between a davar lach, liquid, or something with liquid components, and a davar yavesh, a dry food. By a davar yavesh, we paskin ein bishal achar bishal. If you have a davar yavesh, even if it's nitztanin legamri, even if it cools down completely, to reheat it, even to reheat it to yad seledes, is not an iser bishal. But by a davar lach, if you have liquid that cooled down, and now you go ahead and you reheat it to yad seledes, that is an iser bishal. Over here we're talking about it seems a davar lach. So the Ramah says, the Ramah told us, if you asked an Eina Yehudi to reheat a kedera, a pot of food containing a davar lach, it's also to ask him to do that. And if he did it, you're not allowed to eat the food, even if it's cold. Mishnah Berurah is cut in Tzadik Hey, lahachem hakdera. The Ramah said it's also to ask the Eina Yehudi to reheat the pot of food. Says the Mishnah Berurah, you should realize this is true. Afilu im lo yitna al gabe ha'esh oy hakira mamish deshuv ein bazeh mishum iser chazara. It's also to ask the Eina Yehudi to reheat that kedera of food, even if he's really not going to perform chazara, even if he's not going to be over on the iser d'Rabbanan of chazara. He's not putting the food on the kira or on the fire. He's putting the pot back in a way that would not be usher because of chazara. What's such a possibility? Well, for example, let's say the pot of food was taken off, it got cold, and now he wants to take it and he wants to put it back on a pot on top of the fire. So that wouldn't be an iser chazara. Or let's say he wants to take it. I'm just thinking, what else wouldn't be? Oh, here's another case. We learned yesterday in Mishnah Berurah, Ois Cotton Pei Aleph, on Chav Gimel Lamed Aleph. Let's say you have a wood-burning stove that's not meant for cooking at all. It's a firebox inside, and it's got a steel roof. So we learned a Magen Avram in Mishnah Berurah, Ois Cotton Pei Aleph, that to do chazara, to put the pot back on top, on the roof of that oven, would not be an iser chazara, according to the Magen Avram. Why? Because the steel roof of the wood-burning stove is mafsik between the pot and the fire, and this is not derech bishul. Nobody cooks over there. The Maharil disagreed with the Magen Avram. He says that would only be mutter if you put a piece of wood down and you put the pot on top of that piece of wood. But in any case, if you asked an Eina Yehudi to do that, you wouldn't be asking an Eina Yehudi to do chazara. Still, the Mishnah Berurah says, you're still not allowed to ask the Eina Yehudi to do that. Says the Mishnah Berurah, Afal pikein aser mishum iser bishul keven shenitztanin legamri. The Ramah said you're not allowed to ask an Eina Yehudi to rewarm a pot once it was nitztanin, once it became cold. So says the Mishnah Berurah, you can't ask an Eina Yehudi to rewarm a pot, a davar lach, even if technically he's not doing chazara. Why? Because if the davar lach is already cold, and he's going to go ahead and put it on and rewarm it to yad seledes, that's an iser bishul. So you can't ask an Eina Yehudi to do this. K'moshe kasav siman shin yud ches sif dalid v'sif tezvav b'haga ayin sham. Umikol makom, nevertheless, kasav Magen Avram, the Magen Avram u'sha'arach reinim right. The b'diavad yesh lahater atav shel ba'ofen zeh shaloi ha'emidoy ala eish mamosh ki im al hatanur. Mishnah Berurah says, if you did ask the Eina Yehudi to do this in a way where it's not chazara, and it's not really derech bishul, if you asked him to put it on the metal roof of the tanur, or let's say on top of a pot, then it's okay. We know, we paskin, we learned this in the previous year, when we speak about the mechaber's heter of taking food and putting it on top of the cholent pot, that's only mutter by a davar yavesh. We're not allowed to do it by a davar lach, because if it's a davar lach that was nitztanin legamri and you reheat it to yad seledes, we hold that that's bishul. But there are those shittas that disagree. Therefore, if the Eini Yehudi rewarmed the food, he rewarmed a davar lach by not putting it on the kira mamish. So it's not chazara. He put it on top of a cholent pot, or he put it on top of that wood-burning stove, on the roof of the wood-burning stove. Says the Mishnah Berurah, but di'evet, we're not going to aser the food in that case. Kamoisha kasav, because there are shittas that hold that this is even mutter for a yid to do. We don't paskin that way, but there are shittas that hold that way, so b'di'evet, we're not going to aser the food. Kamoisha kasav sham b'sif tesvav behago. Okay. Ois cotton sadik vav. The Ramah said that if you do ask an Eini Yehudi to do this, and he does rewarm the food becomes aser, and it's aser afilu tzainain. It's aser even if it's cold. Says the Mishnah Berurah cotton sadik vav. After loinena mimeleches Eini Yehudi, even though the Eini Yehudi rewarmed the food, then you realized you weren't allowed to ask him to do it. You took the food off. You waited 2 hours. Now the food is cold. If you eat the food now, you're not getting any benefit from the isser of the Eini Yehudi's malacha. The food is already cold. Still, the Ramah says you're not allowed to eat the food. Says the Mishnah Berurah, why? Mikamakan konsu. This is a penalty. This is a knas that you're getting. Sheyamten ad la'erev, that we're going to make you wait till Motzei Shabbos for Malav Malka to eat that food. Because you're going to have to wait b'chtei sheyeyoseh. You're going to have to wait until enough time after Shabbos that the food could have been rewarmed after Shabbos. Since malacha was done be'isser under your instruction, you're not allowed to use that food anymore. Even though you're not getting hanoah from the malacha that the Eini Yehudi did. But he did maleches isser based on your instruction, that food becomes aser. Also, Eini Yehudi came me atzmoi b'shvil Yisrael. But let's say the Eini Yehudi who's in your house, you didn't ask him to do anything. He went ahead and he took the cholent pot and he put it back on the fire. What's the halacha then? Then the Mishnah Berurah says, Shari lechel tzainain. Then you would be able to eat it when it's cold. You still can't eat it when it's hot, because you're being nene from malacha that the Eini Yehudi did for you on Shabbos. You're not allowed to eat it when it's hot. But when it's cold, you could eat it. Because now you're not getting any hanoah from what he did. You're right to mekach. And you didn't instruct him to do it. You didn't want him to do it. We're not going to go ask the food on a yid because the Eini Yehudi decided to put it on the fire. Now, we're not going to let you eat it when it's hot, because we're not going to let you derive benefit from meleches isser that the Eini Yehudi did for you. If the Yisrael would see the Eini Yehudi putting it on the fire, he would have to stop him. He would have to object. Let's go back to the Ramah. Top line here, Chavtal and Amar Aleph, says the Ramah, Amnon. But let's say the food was taken off the fire, and it wasn't nitztanin legamri. It didn't mamish get cold. It's still warm, and it's still ru'uyim lechol. It's still, ru'uyim lechol doesn't mean that it's edible. It means that it's still edible as warm food. I mean, stone cold cholent is also edible. We don't mean here that it's edible, ro'i lechol, as in chametz fame, ro'i la'achilas kelev, or ro'i la'achilas adam. That's not what we mean here. We mean it's ru'uyim lechol, it's ro'i to be eaten as a warm food. So yeah, the cholent's already a little bit cold, but you can still eat it as warm food. Amnam im loinit stani kolkach, shadayin ru'uyim lechol. If the cholent was taken off, it was still epis warm. Im chimamu oisam ha'enam Yehudim mutar lechol. Then if an Eini Yehudi went ahead and rewarmed it, you're allowed to eat it. Says the Mishnah Berurah, ois cotton tzadik zayin. Sha'adayin ru'uyim lechol, v'lochein. Afa gav shenena mehachimum. Even though you're going to derive hana from the fact that the Eini Yehudi rewarmed it, because now it's nice hot cholent, shari b'di'evid. B'di'evid, we're not going to ask for the food, and we're going to even let you eat it when it's hot. Because it was edible cholent. You would have, you're sitting, you're schmoozing around the Shabbos table, the cholent was served already 20 minutes ago, you still would have eaten it. Oh, now the guy went ahead and rewarmed it, now it's mamish geschmack. But that we're not going to aser. And that's true, even if the Eini Yehudi mamish put it on the fire, and he did it with your instruction. Still, we're not going to ask for the food. Afal pikein ein lesser atavshil b'di'evid. Aiskan tzadikes, we're saying mutar lechol, that food you're allowed to eat. Va'afilu chimei ma'eni Yehudi tavshil ubasar biyachad. Even if you had a food that was a davar lach and a davar yavesh combined. So you have over here a tavshil, that's the davar lach, ubasar and a davar yavesh biyachad. V'hatavshil lo yahaya b'tchila roy lechol machmas ninusay. I'm not sure exactly what kind of dish it is, but realize what we're saying over here. We're making a chilik over here in how hot the food still is. And we're saying if the food was nitztanin legamri, if the food was mamish cold, then if the Ein Yehudi rewarmed it, we ask for the food, and you're not allowed to eat it even when it's cold. But we're saying if the food is still warm, then if the Ein Yehudi rewarmed it, you're allowed to eat it. Why? Because you're not getting so much anah from what he did. Now the Mishnah Berurah poses the following case. What if you have a dish that's combined a davar yavesh and a davar lach? The davar lach is already not edible as warm food. The liquid component is already cold, and you wouldn't eat it as warm food. But the davar yavesh is edible the way it is. So says the Mishnah Berurah, v'atav shelo yoyim etchila roy lecha machmas stinusay afal pikei loy neser al basar ki hu hayoy lecha lapetzainen. Well, aser the liquid component, because on the liquid component we're going to say that you're being neneh from the Meleches Isser of the Ein Yehudi, but we're not going to aser the davar yavesh component. Okay, let's move on here in the Ramah, second line down, middle of the line. Very interesting Ramah. Says the Ramah like this: Lachein. Therefore what? So what the Ramah is going back on is, we've established at the bottom of Chav Gimel Amud Beis that when Chazara is Aser, you're not allowed to ask an Ein Yehudi to perform Chazara for you, even though it's only Nisa D'Rabbanan. You're Lakam, Nisa D'Rabbanan is Aser. Lachein, therefore, says the Ramah, Noihagin, we are Noyig, Sha'enam Yehudim moitzian hakederois min hatanurim shematminon behen. We allow the Ein Yehudi to take the pot out of the tanur. So you had a shehiyah situation. You had a situation where you had a pot that was inside the tanur, it's garof, it's katam, all of the requirements that you need for shehiyah. You had the pot in there. Now the Ein Yehudi took the hot cholent out of the tanur. Okay? Now, if you want to get that cholent back onto the fire, that would be a chazara situation. Says the Ramah, there's a cute chap here. Lachein noegin. The minig is, sha'enam Yehudim moitzian akterois min hatanurim shen matiminin bohen. The Ein Yehudim would take the cholent out of the tanur. It was nice and hot in the tanur. Matminim doesn't mean hatmana, that it was insulated. It means that the pot was inside in the tanur over there in an oifen shel heter. It was in there in a way that it was allowed to be there, that she was mutter. Now the guy takes it out. U'moishivin oisan eitzel tanur beis hachorif oy olav. Now what's the beis hachorif? Chorif is winter. The beis hachorif is a winter house, a winter room. You had a room that you used during the winter. Maybe it's a room that was more insulated than the rest of the house. And this room had a wood-burning stove in it that was meant for heat. This is not a cooking stove. This is a wood-burning stove. You put wood inside, you close the doors, it's a cast metal box, you make a fire, and it makes the room nice and warm. Now, it has an upper surface. The upper surface is not meant for cooking. It's just a metal roof of a metal box, like the Tana that we discussed early in this year, and yesterday in Mishnah Berurah's Cut and Pei Aleph. What would we have the Ein Yehudi do? This wood-burning stove had no fire in it. The Ein Yehudi would take the cholent out of the cooking tanur, and now you'd go serve the cholent, and now the Ein Yehudi will take the cholent and put it on top of the cold furnace in the Beis HaChorif that has no fire in it. Okay, so far there's no chiddush. So far the Ein Yehudi took out the cholent, and what did he do with it? He put it on a cold surface. Okay, what's the big deal? Oh, the big deal is now, 10 minutes later, the shifcha is going to come in, and the Ein Yehudi maid is going to come in, and she's going to build a fire in the wood-burning stove of the Beis HaChoref. And guess what? The cholent is sitting on top of that furnace. So when the Eina Yehudi Shivcha builds a fire in the furnace of the Beis HaChoref, the cholent is going to get reheated. So let's reanalyze this. We said, are you allowed to ask an Eina Yehudi to do Chazara? No, you're not allowed to ask an Eina Yehudi to do Chazara. But you know what you are allowed to do? You're allowed to instruct the Eina Yehudi to take out the cholent and then later put it down on the wood-burning stove of the Beis HaChoref, which is cold. There's no fire inside. And then instruct the Shivcha, the Eina Yehudi Shivcha later, to go make a fire inside the furnace of the Beis HaChoref, which is going to make the cholent hot. Now, why are you allowed to do this? The reason you're allowed to do this is because when the Shivcha makes a fire in the wood-burning stove of the Beis HaChoref, she's not doing it to reheat the cholent. She's doing it to warm up the room. We're talking about the winter. It's cold outside. When you ask her to make a fire inside the wood-burning stove of the Beis HaChoref, she's not doing it to warm up the cholent. She's doing it to warm up the house. She's doing it to heat the house. That's the heater. Now, it's true that the cholent is going to get hot. It's even true that it's a psik reisha. It's immediately obvious that the cholent is going to get hot. But the Mishnah Berurah is going to say, you're not doing anything. The Eina Yehudi is doing it. And the Eina Yehudi, her kavana is completely to heat the house. And over here, we're makel. This is amira la'akum with a davar she'ena miskavin that happens to be a psik reisha. We're going to be makel. So now let's see this inside. So again, the Ramah said, Lachein, therefore, noyag in the minig became, Sha'enim Yehudim Oitzian Akteris Benat Tanurim, that the Eina Yehudim Avodim would take the cholent out of the Tanur, Shemat Minin Behen, where it was staying hot for Shabbos, Umeshivan Oisan Eitzel Tanur Beis HaChoref Oy Olav, and then they would put it back either next to the wood-burning stove or on top of the wood-burning stove of the Beis HaChoref, Umaveres HaShivcha Achakach HaTanur Hahu, and then the Eina Yehudi maid will come later and build a fire in the furnace of the Beis HaChoref. And now the cholent will get hot again. Says the Mishnah Berurah, is cut and sadik test. What's going on over here? The Ramah is going back on the halakha that we learned at the beginning of today's shir. Upirushai, and the explanation of this Ramah is as follows. Since you're not allowed to directly instruct the Eina Yehudi to do chazara and to rewarm the cholent, so the Eina Yehudi took the cholent out of the tanur. You want to have hot cholent for shal shudis. You can't tell the Eina Yehudi, hey, put the cholent back in the tanur, because that would be chazara. That would be amir la'akum and a derabanan. So you're not allowed to do that. So we came up with a chap. Lakach noihagim. So now they came up with a chap, and they came up with a minig. Sha'ein the Yehudi noisanat tavshel sheniskar ligamri ala tanur kaidim shehusak. The Eina Yehudi will take the stone cold cholent, it's stanan legamri, and he'll put it on the wood burning stove of the Beis HaChoref, koidim shehusak, before there's a fire in the wood burning stove. So right now, did the Eina Yehudi do anything wrong? No, he put it on a cold oven. Did you do anything wrong asking him to do it? No, you asked him to take a pot of cold cholent and put it on top of a cold furnace. So far, there's no problems. So far, there's no isser here because there's no fire in the oven that he's putting the cholent on. So there's no chazara. And now with the Eina Yehudi Shivcha will come later and make a fire inside the tanur. Her kavana is to heat up the house. Her kavana is not to rewarm the cholent, and heating up the house is mutter. Not only is heating up the house is mutter, you are allowed to instruct an Eina Yehudi Shivcha, go build a fire in order to warm up the house. That's a miral akum on making a fire. You're allowed to do that. Because we paskin lahalacha that everybody is considered a chayla. Everybody is considered an ill person when it comes to the risk of getting cold. We're not talking about when it's 55 degrees outside, Rabbi Isai. We're talking about it's 10 degrees outside, it's 20 degrees outside, it's seriously cold. You're considered a chayla to have to sit in a cold house. Amir al-akum is a derabanan. The Chachamim were not geyser on Amir La'akim Mimakim Chayli, so you're considered an ill person when it comes to the cold, so there's no Amir La'akim on asking an Eini Yehudi to go build a fire to warm the house. U'kamosh HaKasav is Siman Reish Ayin Vav Be'ez Hashem Yisparach. V'loy lechamim es hatavshil. Har kavana is not to warm up the cholent. So again, what's happening over here is, are you allowed to ask the Eini Yehudi to go rewarm the cholent, to put it back in the tanner, or to put it back on top of a kira on Shabbos after you took it off? No, that would be Amira La'akam on Nissa D'Rabbanan of Chazara. But in this case, the Eini Yehudi took it out. Now you're asking the Eini Yehudi, you're instructing the Eini Yehudi, take the pot of cholent, put it on top of the cold oven in the Beis HaChayrif. There's nothing wrong with that. An hour later, you tell the Shivcha, hey, Shivcha, please grab wood and please make a fire in the wood-burning stove in the Beis HaChayrif to eat the house. That's mutter. You're allowed to tell an Eini Yehudi to make a fire to heat up a house. The cholent is going to get hot? That's not her kavana. She's not making the fire in order to heat the cholent. It's not even really the ikar of your kavana. The ikar of your kavana is to heat the house. V'af to have a psik reisha l'gabi atavshel sheneschamim memela. It's a psik reisha. We know that a davar she'enim miskaven, if it's a psik reisha, it's usher. If it's something that's definitely going to occur, it's usher even though it's a davar she'enim miskaven. So how are you telling me it's mutter over here? She makes the fire inside the furnace of the Beis HaChayrif. You know for sure that the child is going to get hot. Says the Mishnah Berurah, Mikal Makayim, Ba'amira La'eini Yehudi Dehev Shvus. When it comes to Amira La'aka, which is only Nissa D'Rabbanan, the less by Maisa, and you're not doing anything, you're not doing anything at all. You're not performing a Maisa. To say that Amira La'akum is Aser, that it's Aser to tell an Eini Yehudi to do something where it's a Psik Reisha that an Isser will happen, that we don't Aser. It's a very interesting, by the way, very practical case that this is Negeya to. And that is when somebody forgets, I don't know how much is Negeya anymore nowadays with all the fancy appliances that we have at the Shabbos modes and everything. But a good old-fashioned refrigerator that had a bulb in it, and you used to loosen the bulb before Shabbos so that the light shouldn't go on when you open the fridge. You realize that you forgot to undo the bulb. Could you ask an Eini Yehudi to open the fridge? Yeah. When he opens the fridge, it's a psik reisha that the light is going on. So isn't that Amira La'akum to do a malacha? You're asking the Eini Yehudi, could you do me a favor? Could you open up the refrigerator and take out the milk? Could you open up the refrigerator and take out the ketchup? Right? So you're not asking him to turn on the light, but what do you mean? It's a psik reisha that the light is going to go on. He's going to open the door, the light is going to go on. So is that mutter? Yes, it's mutter. Because we're not makbid on psik reisha by Amira La'akum. That's why over here, could you instruct the Eini Yehudi Shivcha to build a fire in the wood-burning stove of the Beis HaChayrif? Yes. It's a psik reisha that she's going to cook up the cholent. That's okay. It's Amira La'akum. Her ikar kavana is to fire up the furnace to heat the house. And heating the house is mutter. It's a psik reisha that she's also going to cook up the cholent. That's okay. That's psik reisha. But Amira La'akum, we say, is mutter. V'chein kasa b'shas hetshuvas bei shloimeh chelik aleph siman nun hey. V'chein kasa b'shas hetshuvas shalomeisha b'adur tlisay chelik gimel siman gimel shechalila las. Oh, whoop. 1 second. I think I skipped. Tavade kavanos Eini Yehudi b'hesek achar kach gam b'shvil. I skipped. 1 second. Yeah. I skipped. Let's go back up in Mishnah Berurah ois cut and tzadik tes. V'af to have a psik reisha l'gabi atavshel sheneschamim memela mikal mokim ba'amira L'eini Yehudi dev shvus l'es b'maisa lo yimachminu kulei hai v'shari ap psik reisha. Now says the Mishnah Berurah v'da. However, you should understand. T'chol zeh ba'aiblich shebetaner beis HaChayrif shalanu she'ein derech levashel b'chol milamala al gabe hataner. The Mishnah Berurah wants you to understand when exactly this is mutter. This is mutter if the Eved, if the Eini Yehudi, is putting the cholent on what he calls the aiblich shebetaner, which means on top of the wood-burning stove, which is not a place that's meant for cooking. This is a heating stove. It's a wood-burning stove for heating a house. They didn't cook on top of it. So to ask the Eini Yehudi to put the pot over there and before there's a fire and then let the shifcha make the fire, that's mutter. Lakach, Nucha loymar de ein ikar kavana sa ein Yehudi b'hahesek rak lechamim abayis v'loy levasha lakdera she'omdes melamala al gabi atana. The reason this is mutter is because now later, when the shifcha comes and makes the fire, we believe and we understand that her kavana is to make a fire to heat the house, because that's what this wood-burning stove is. It's a heating furnace. It's not a cooking appliance. Avol, says the Mishnah Berurah, hatanurim shekarin English akichen, but the furnaces that were called English cooking appliances, so this was a dual-purpose appliance. This was a wood-burning stove that was meant for heating the house, and it was also meant for cooking on top of. Oh, then you can't do this trick. Because in that case, it's the derech to cook on top of this. Then Isser Gomer Yesh Bazeh Lahamin Amaychel Lechamim Al Yedeya Eina Yehudi Afilu Kaidam Ha'asaka. Then this would be Aser. Why? The Vadai Shkavana Sa'eina Yehudi B'Hahesek Achakach Gam B'Shvil Bishul Hakderos. Because if you're using this English cooking appliance, then it's very nice that the first Eina Yehudi who took the chalent out of the tanner, he put it down on top of the cold English cooking device. So far, no problem. But now when you ask the shifcha to make a fire in the furnace, now you can't say that her whole kavanah is to heat the house. No, she knows that she's firing up a cooking appliance. And she knows that there's a pot on top of it. So now part of her kavanah is to fire up the pot. Now you have an amira la'akum and a derabanan. Can't do that. So could be even a deraisa, depending on the case. Sefer Tuv Tam Vadas Me'agarn Marshak B'Sibid Kuf Ayin Hey. V'chein Kazav B'Shaz T'Chuvas B'Shloim B'Chel Gav Sibid Nun Hey. V'chein Kazav B'Shaz T'Chuvas Shal L'Meishav Adur T'Lisai. B'Chel Gimel Sivil Gimel Shechalil Alasis Kain. V'ayin B'Bir Halacha. Okay, now we go back into the Ramah. Says the Ramah. So we had this cute heter. The cholent was taken out. You can't put it back on. It's a chazara. You can't ask the Eina Yehudi to put it back on. Amir la'akum and a derabanan. But we came up with this chap. Tell the Eina Yehudi to put it on top of the cold furnace before there's a fire in it. Then have the shivcha make a fire in the furnace to heat the house. And, now everything becomes mutter. But, says the Ramah, Aval al Yidei Yisrael, Aser b'kai gavna. Would it be mutter for a Yid to do this? Would it be mutter for a Yid to take the pot and put it on the cold oven before there's a fire inside, and then have the Eina Yehudi maid go ahead and make a fire? And you'll say to yourself, what did I do? I didn't do chazara. I took a pot of cholent and I put it on top of a cold stove. Then I asked the Eina Yehudi to fire up the stove to heat the house. And now, memela, the cholent will get hot. Is that okay? Can you do that? Says the Ramah, no, you cannot do that. Explains the Mishnah Berurah why. Ois cut and kuf. Aser b'kai gavda. Return to Loimar. What the Ramah is telling you is aser is. Lahoishiv hakederos eitzel tanu beis hachayrif ay olav afilu kaidem ha'esek. For you, for the Yisrael, to put the cold cholent on top of the wood-burning stove in the Beis HaChayrif, even though there's no fire in it, and then have an Eina Yehudi make a fire, that would be aser. Tahavale ke'echad noisen hakedera ve'echad ha'esh. Because essentially, you know what this case is? This case is similar to a case which is aser. And that is, forget the Eina Yehudi. You and your friend are sitting down and having a Shabbos Suda. You took the cholent off. Chazara is aser. You didn't have in mind to put it back. You put it down. So chazara is aser. Now you decided, hey, it would be really nice to have delicious, nice food later. So one guy says, okay, I'm putting the food on top of the cold oven. So you put the food on top of the cold oven. You didn't do anything. Now the next guy comes and puts the fire in the oven. Now, he's not allowed to make a fire on Shabbos. It's a deraisa of Havara. But how about Bishul? Did you do Bishul? You put the fire on the thing. You put the fire on a cold oven. Do you have any responsibility for the Bishul that takes place? The answer is yes. It's also with the Rabbanon. The Harishon Potter Aval Aser. You took a cold pot of cholent, you put it on a cold wood-burning stove with no fire inside, knowing that somebody else was going to go make a fire inside the oven. It's also what you did is also b'drabanan. Potter, you're potter. You don't have to be karbachatos. You're not chayv misa. Avaloser, but b'drabanan, you're not allowed to do it. Masha'en kein ba'amira le'eni Yehudi deshari, but to ask an any Yehudi to do it, like we said, is mutter. To ha'ikar kavanasam lechamim abayis l'shari. Umizen nira heter, says the Mishnah Berurah. From this whole discussion, the following heter should come out. Umizen nira heter she'im nasa na'eni Yehudi mayim l'seich ha'kedera ha'kavua b'tanor. Apparently, I'm not exactly sure what the purpose of this device was, but they had some kind of a tank, like a water tank, that was built into the side of the kedera. Now, we know by our samovars and by our urns, you cannot allow them to run empty. If they run empty, the heating device will burn out. So by them, they had this tank or jug built onto the side of the kedera. I guess it was there as a kettle to use during the week. That was a way that you heated up water. But this kettle had one flaw, and that is you could never have it empty when the fire was built in the tanur. Because if it was empty and you built a fire in the tanur, this tank would overheat and it would break. It would split. So you always had to make sure that you had it full. So now, let's say what happens is like this. You have the shifcha Eina Yehudis go ahead and build a fire in the furnace. For what purpose? Maybe for heating up the house. But the tank is empty. So you want her to fill up the tank, not to boil up water, not to have hot water to drink, not to have hot water to wash the dishes or anything else. No, just to preserve the integrity of the tank. You don't want the tank to plotz. So you wanted to put water in it. Says the Mishnah Berurah that that's very similar to what we've been discussing. Umizen nira heter. Let's say the Eina Yehudi goes ahead, builds a fire in the tanur, and knows that he has to put water in the tank so it shouldn't plotz. And he goes ahead and he puts in water. And the water gets hot. A Yisrael is allowed to use that water. You could use it l'hadiach ben kelim, to wash dishes. You could use it to make a coffee, the Mefarshim say. You even can instruct the Eina Yehudi to put the water in there. In the case that we discussed previously, when the Eina Yehudi puts the pot on top of the cold oven, he's putting it on there so that it should get hot when the shivcha comes later and makes a fire in the tanur, and you're still allowed to tell the Eina Yehudi to do it. You're allowed to tell the Eina Yehudi put the pot on the cold oven, even though when he does, he knows that he's doing it so that eventually it should get heated up. Over here, there's no kavanah to heat up the water at all. They're putting the water into the tank so that the tank shouldn't plotz, but they're not interested in heating up the water. It could be that even if the Eina Yehudi puts the water into that tank, not before the fire was built in the tanur, but after the fire was built in the tanur, it's possible that the water is still mutter. But to instruct the Eina Yehudi to do this after the fire is already in the tanur, that the Mishnah Berurah says that we should not do. But a Yid certainly is not allowed to put the water into that tank even before the fire is built. And by the way, when I'm telling you that you could use hot water to go ahead and wash dishes, that's only true if the dishes that you're washing aren't dirty from fat. You wouldn't be allowed to pour hot water on a dish that has fat on it, mishum shemamacha hashuman, because you're going to melt the fat for having noilid, and you're going to create noilid, kamesha kasav siman shin chav sif yodalid, and we touched upon this in the previous year. El yaniach hakeli toichamayim v'lo ya'ar aleim, rather you should just put the dish into a basin and not pour hot water on it. Dezeh shari b'shem deloy ka'avid ma'isa. Okay, we're going to stop over there. Thank you so much for joining me for Limud HaTorah. The source of Limud HaTorah should be Megan against Klal Yisrael. The Rosh should send Yeshua's, Refuah's, Parnasset should do come to all those in need. We should be Zaycha to see the BSKL Tzedek, B'mher, V'yameinu, Amen. Be well.